This is the new Mitsubishi Xpander.
No.
This is the new Mitsubishi Xpander. Welcome to the Nissan and Mitsubishi multiverse. On my left, we have the new Mitsubishi Xpander. On my right, we have the new Nissan Livina. Now, what's the story here? Well, it's because of the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance. Of course, Mitsubishi and Nissan, they're partners in that alliance and they're doing quite a bit of platform sharing. If anything, it's a bit closer to badge engineering. But does it really matter? Well, we'll find out for you today. Now, both of these vehicles built in the same plant over in Indonesia, and they're exported to other markets, particularly here in the Philippines. The Xpander, of course, has been in the market for a few years already. The Levina was launched just earlier this year. Now, let's start with the Xpander, since this is the one we're more familiar with. Now, it's been in the market already for a couple of years, but for 2022, we have the facelifted model, which is why we have a different front end, adjusted lights here. These are DRLs, of course. The headlights are down here, which have also changed. It has this hammer shape, which I think Mitsubishi is calling Thor's hammer, which is also kind of weird because it's Volvo that uses that kind of terminology with their headlights. But nevertheless, the new model looks quite sharp compared to before. I mean, the previous one was already sharp looking. This one even more so with that front grille, which has these nice bars down here. There you go, with fog lamps down there. So DRL headlights, fog lamps, indicators, I think are right here as well. Now, over on the side, we can see that it is, in fact, an MPV with quite a bit of chrome, because if you look around, chrome, of course, the 17-inch wheels down there. It has a button here because this one comes with the smart key that you can use. All in all, it's a very nice looking vehicle. But when we jump over into the Livina, you can see the striking difference with the look. Because Nissan, of course, have to use their V-Motion style look, which is why you have a different front grille, which, by the way, doesn't have a lot of openings here. It's pretty much closed up here, a little open here. Same with this one, but the cooling demands of the vehicle would dictate how much holes they have in the front anyway. So that's like a minor detail on my end. But DRLs here, they also adopt the split headlamp design. So DRL, headlamp, fog lamp, if you notice, different shape with the fog lamp. Now, unlike the Xpander, this Livina is actually not a facelift yet, because this was launched later. The Xpander was launched earlier than the Livina, so they have a bit more updates in the Xpander line already. But looking at the vehicle, you can see different wheels. These are 16s, which is also why there's a difference of ground clearance between the two. The Xpander has 205/55 17s. This one has 205/55 16s. Now, this not being a top-of-the-line model, it has less chrome. Silver trim here, body colored, no chrome here, which is actually nice. It doesn't really need the chrome even for the door grips right there. But clearly, what's important is that these two vehicles are sharing quite a bit together, actually a lot. The panels, the doors, the mirrors, I mean, if you look at the parts and everything, that isn't the front bumper or the bonnet, it's going to be very, very similar. And that is key, because when it comes to production, it's cheaper by the dozen, and definitely dozens of thousands. Now, the key to really being efficient with these vehicles is to share as much parts and panels as possible. So if you come here, I'll show you what I mean. If you look at the quarter panel here, this would be the same as this one, like on the other side. Of course, this one has a fuel tank, this one does not. It's over on that side. Now, by sharing panels and even sharing a lot of other components, they can really be efficient, because one press handles panels for two vehicles. Now, they do make differences in terms of the actual design of the taillights. If you look here, if you look here, they're different. But if you look at the lines of it, they're actually the same again. So they can be mounted on the same panels, on the same assembly line, no problem. Hopefully no Mitsubishi employee mixes up the taillights of both. Now, to the Xpander. The design of this one has been adjusted. As you can see, they have changes to the taillight, of course, the rear bumper with that nice sporty accent down there below. It's actually very neat. Opening the tailgate, is a little button in there. It's an electronic button that releases the trunk. But what you get here is actually a nice bit of cargo space. It's about 40 inches wide, and well, it has a little pocket there on the side. But in terms of depth here, not so much, of course. This being a 7-seater, it leaves a little bit of space in the back only. But when you start folding down, come over here. See? When you start folding down, now you get more room. That expands to about 41 inches from here to there, which is actually really good for something of this size. And if you look down here, this is what I really like. You have this actually 3 compartments down here that you can use for whatever you like. I actually really like that touch because you can put stuff that you don't want other people to see you loading in your vehicle. Now, as you can see, the rear seat of this one, the middle row, is actually still up. But to fold that down, actually, I won't fold that down. Let's go to the other one. Now, opening the Levina is different from the Xpander, or at least this variant anyway, because it's an actual latch there. But in this configuration, you can see we have really stretched it out. From here to over there is about 66 inches, which is actually quite big. And as you can see, the interior design of both vehicles, they changed a few things by adding a bit more brown to the armrests of all rows, which is actually kind of nice. One thing we do want to note here is that this Livina does not come with center seat armrests, not this variant anyway, but we can also show you how you can configure your vehicle in many different ways, because you can fold down the seats as you see fit. You can even tumble the middle row, so it gives you a nice taller space depending on what you want to fit inside your Livina or Xpander. Again, same thing for both vehicles. But that's also very useful when it comes to getting in and out of the third row, because, well, if the seat is tumbled, you can easily go inside and take your seat. Now let's check out what's under the hood. Right here with the Xpander, we have a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder engine that makes 104.5 PS and 141 Newton meters of torque. It's driving the front wheels via a 4-speed automatic. Over on this side, however, we have something that's actually not different at all. It's also a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. It makes 105 PS according to official literature and 141 Newton meters of torque, driving the front wheels via a 4-speed automatic. Actually, the engines of both vehicles exactly the same. It's the 4A91 on this one and 4A91 on this one. There's no difference in terms of engine, but for some reason Mitsubishi is quoting 0.5 PS less than this one, which I think is more of the conversion from kilowatts to PS or metric horsepower. But you look at both engine bays side by side, yes, exactly the same. Even the airbox is the same. What Nissan did try to do, though, was try to remove the references to Mitsubishi with their vehicle. If you look up here, we have the serial number plate up there. On that side, we also have it for the chassis number and everything. But in the case of this one, they've removed the manufacturer there, Mitsubishi Motors Corporation, this one as well, but not really a big deal. The big change, though, is with the engine cover. There's no engine cover if you look at it right there. This one does, but you can still see Mitsubishi right here when you look at the airbox. It means that, let's say if you drove in your Levina into a Mitsubishi dealership, you might be able to get your oil change no problem. Same with the Mitsubishi Xpander. Really important for Nissan is to differentiate the vehicle from the Xpander. And they're doing that a bit with the interior design, the color combinations, the trims, so on and so forth. Of course, we can still spot a lot of details that are very much Mitsubishi, especially if you've driven several Mitsubishi models before. The steering wheel, for example, if you look at, say, the Mitsubishi Mirage, this would look very, very familiar to you, except for the Nissan logo there. Same with the buttons, they're also very familiar. Even the instrument cluster is very Mitsu. Of course, we can go all around the vehicle and point out all the Mitsu details we can, but it's nice that they actually made an effort to differentiate. Of course, the color combinations, actually very, very nice. It's a bit more on the mature side, though. What I want to point out, this is all pretty much plastic right there. So that's something to be expected in a vehicle of this class. Now, for features, power windows on the left, auto one touch up and down for the driver's side, locks right there, the locks here as well. You've got your power mirrors with the fold mechanism, yep, which is pretty nice. Traction control, this one does come with traction control, but the lower variants of the Levina do not come with the traction control and stability control. So keep that in mind. Now, looking around here, what do we see? For one, the audio system. This is actually one of the things that I'm not really a fan of with the Levina, because look at the resolution, the way it is. The audio quality is actually pretty good. But when it comes to the functionality, it feels a bit dated compared to a lot of Nissans we've actually driven before. So keep that in mind. Also, it does not have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It does have the phone link, Bluetooth, and USB in. Just one. There's only one USB port in this Levina, by the way. It's right there. You do get a 12-volt outlet right next to it. So if you want to expand your USB ports, you can always plug in an adapter right there. But what's nice here is the storage ability in the Xpander, because, sorry, not Xpander, Levina. See what I mean? So with the Levina, you've got pockets here on either side. So that's two. You've got an upper pocket here, which I think is good for my phone, which, hey, where's my phone? It's over there somewhere. But there's a pocket up here for your phone. There's another pocket just below it for RFID cards. You can use that. There's no compartment up here, though, for your sunglasses, but that's okay. You do have a tray here, a map tray, along with a glove compartment. See how the cover actually follows the line of that compartment. Pretty nice. Your manual right there. Nothing really interesting there. Two cup holders here, and then a center console box right here. But what I don't like is this. It kind of pulls out. Yeah, they could have done better than this, because it doesn't really feel that fantastic. But see what I mean? Putting it back, there you go. But what's nice here is that the visibility is really good. The steering is nice and light. Your regular lever handbrake is pretty positive. The shifter, it feels pretty good. Oh, you do have a reverse camera here, but the resolution, yeah, not really great. You don't get the 360 camera system like you would get in other Nissans with the around view monitor. So yeah, keep that in mind. But overall, it's a nice cabin. But again, this being a mid-grade model, it's actually quite respectable. But if anything, I think they could have improved on a few things, particularly with this right here. Now, let's check out the Xpander. Now we're inside the new Xpander. And remember when I mentioned that this is already a facelift? Well, we can see some of the updates already with interior, because of course, as a vehicle goes through iterations, a lot of the improvements, the lessons learned from the previous iteration get applied to the new one. And that's what we're seeing here, which is why the interior looks much nicer than the Xpander before. Again, the Levina is actually more representative of the pre-facelift Xpander. This one is the newer model, which is why you have these design elements. Of course, this is also a top-of-the-line one, which is why it has these nice things like soft touch there, soft touch there. Of course, plastic up here, but again, it's the fact that it's soft touch here. It's actually really nice. A lot of the same details, like the glove compartment with the tray up there. And what is this? Oh, it's the laminated ORCR of the vehicle, which is kind of neat. Now, the center stack also has changed. This one also has the electronic parking brake, which is why you have that, along with the auto brake hold. Two cup holders here, a pocket here, so on and so forth, USB port. And then this AC unit right here in the middle. I don't think it's an auto climate control, but it's still pretty cold, so let me tone that down. Vents up here, a nicer audio system compared to the one the Xpander had before. This one has the nicer reverse camera, which we can see clearly right there. Although it is off center, oddly enough, which is kind of weird, but not really a big deal. But what is a big deal is that this one has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So let's try it out. You plug in here. This is the main USB port. There are actually USB ports also. All right, so here's my phone. I retrieved it from under the seat. So when you plug it in, it's pretty simple. It should pop up over there. Done. You got your Apple CarPlay right here. The screen is a bit small. I mean, it is kind of, it's not one of those edge-to-edge units. That would have been much nicer, but considering that the class this vehicle is competing in, it's actually quite nice. So it's actually pretty clear, seems pretty fast, which is good. Now, the problem though is that once you're plugged into the Android Auto, by the way, it's also not wireless. Where do you put your phone? Because kind of weird to put it here. That might actually work. Here, there's a slot here. Nope, the shifter will hit that. Here, it's kind of weird because the cable's right there. So, keep these things in mind when you're using the Xpander. Now, with the driving controls, we can see that the steering wheel has indeed changed. So, compared to what we had before in the pre-facelift Xpander, this is much nicer. The buttons are the same, but it does have cruise control, as you can see right here. But the driving display is nicer. It's got a color screen in the middle. Nothing too fancy, but it is a nice touch compared to before. You do have the mirrors, the mirror controls right here, along with the traction control, just like in the Levina. To control this screen here, you can go through the buttons here. It'll give you all the data you need that it can display. It's not as modern as some of the other vehicles we've seen in terms of the driving display, but it is a nice touch nonetheless. So that said, one big upgrade compared to the Levina is the armrest right here. Because, well, yeah, the fact that it's an actual armrest you can lean on is much nicer. Let's check out the middle row. So here's the middle row of the Xpander. The seating is actually nice. It doesn't have the theater seating like other vehicles, meaning like as you move up the back, it gets higher and higher. Well, this one is higher, but maybe not as much as I would have liked. And also, this headrest for the front seats is actually very tall, which is kind of, keep that in mind. You do have a hook up here so you can hang stuff if you're bringing some, say, takeout home. You've also got a pocket for your phone, like what I'm using now. The nicer touches here, USB ports below, USB on the right, USB-C on the left. You've got AC controls up here, which is, actually nice and cool. You've got a center armrest with cup holders on this one, which is actually nice. Adjustable headrest. So actually, for a long drive, this is going to be pretty comfortable. Let's check out the third row. So clearly, the third row of the Xpander, which also applies to the Levina, is not for me or anyone of my size or even taller. So keep that in mind when you're positioning people in this third row. It's not going to be for everyone. But that said, the seat is actually comfortable. Cup holder on the left, cup holder on the right. There's a charging port on this one. Yeah, there's a 12-volt outlet here, which is nice. Pockets up here, pockets up there. So it's actually quite functional here in the back. One thing I want to point out here, though, is the headrests, actually for all the seats of the vehicle, because some are really stiff. Same with this one. Same with this one. We can't even lift it up. The one on the third row. So I think they need to work on the spec of this because I think it's kind of stuck. No. If you want my thoughts on the Xpander in a nutshell, I think it's the most underrated vehicle in the Philippine market by far. Because the good points of this MPV, it's not really on the spec sheet when you compare it to many of its rivals in the class, like let's say the Avanza. That one has a lot of newer specs, also a newer generation one. It's also not as tall as, let's say, like something like a BRV, or at least they're marketing it as an SUV. But in terms of ground clearance, this one does beat it. But it's really when you drive it that the goodness of the Xpander comes through. I think it's really, really underrated because a lot of the good things of the vehicle you can't put on paper. Things like noise suppression, for example. If you notice, a lot of motorcycles are on my right side right now. Loud exhaust, lots of jeepneys around here and buses. The way the noise comes into the cabin, it's very gentle, it's very muted. And that is what you look for. That's a sign of a really well-engineered vehicle. If you sit in a lot of its competitors in the class, of course, like Avanza, for example, some noise does come through into the cabin much more than this one. This one just feels like it's well-refined. It feels like the noise control or the noise suppression that they have on the vehicle far exceeds the price tag. And the ride quality of the Xpander is also very good. Like right now on bumpy asphalt and even on concrete. There are, of course, some disadvantages with Xpander because, the 4-speed auto is not fantastic. It was never meant to be exciting. So if you're punching it up a mountain road now, not really. But the handling is good for an MPV. Keep that in mind. It's just that the power, the speed, it's not there. And what can you really expect from a vehicle with 104.5, according to the spec sheet, PS? So in terms of driving performance, in that sense, it's not going to be exciting, but it is quite efficient. In the city, we were getting around 8 kilometers per liter, average speed of about 22 kilometers per hour, so normal, but it's not really fantastic because, again, it's limited by the 4-speed automatic. And mind you, we don't have any passengers in the vehicle yet. On the highway, on Skyway 3 actually, we were getting around 17 kilometers per liter, average speed of about 70 kilometers per hour. So Skyway 3 more or less to the regular Skyway portion. So all in all, it's pretty good in terms of fuel economy. And yeah, see what I mean about the bumpy stuff right now? It's actually really good how this is managing. Now let's hop on over to the Levina and see if it's any different. One of the more interesting things about the Levina is the name itself. No, please, no Ricky Martin jokes. No Levina, La Vida Loca, yeah, whatever. None of those jokes, please, in the comment section. And I know maybe some of you will, but Levina itself has been available in the Philippine market before as a first-generation model. They even made it as a Grand Levina. And I remember driving that vehicle before. The formula was kind of the same. It's front-wheel drive. It had a 1.8 liter engine driving the front wheels, but it was also quite low, like a car, like this one. It was also slim and long, even though it sounds weird, but it is what it is, and I'm sticking with it. Being based on the Xpander, though, it's a little bit different, but more of the same. Like it's a bit bigger, it's a bit wider, but in terms of how it feels, it's kind of very similar. So in that sense, Nissan does have more experience, but using the name Levina is actually quite interesting because, as you know, name recall is something very important here in the Philippine market, which is why models like the Sylphy was also one of the reasons why it didn't sell, because Sylphy, what's that? That's a Sentra, but they're not calling it Sentra, they call it Sylphy, and so it's kind of weird. Now, speaking of the name, when Mitsubishi launched the Xpander in Indonesia like so many years ago, I remember I was there during the world premiere, and I was having a conversation with Osamu Masuko, then president of Mitsubishi Motors Corporation. May he rest in peace. He passed away, I think 2 years ago. But it was a very nice guy, very sharp. And then I remember mentioning to him, Masuko-san, why didn't you use the name Adventure Sport for the Xpander instead of Xpander? Because name recall is something very big in the Philippine market. And of course, Sport indicates a smaller version of a current Mitsubishi model, like Pajero Sport or Outlander Sport, which we know as ASX, or the Montero Sport, again, same as Pajero Sport. And he said, oh, well, we're going in a new direction globally, so the Xpander name is sticking. And I remember joking with him, Xpander sounds like either luggage or my pants, and just had a good laugh. But nevertheless, the Xpander was very successful, and it was good that Nissan can also capitalize on the good engineering of the Xpander for this new model, because you drive it around, it feels solid, it rides over the bumps again like the Xpander, same thing, very, very well. It's very quiet inside, even with all the motorcycles around, it's not a problem. The only real difference is with the acceleration and the fuel economy, and that's brought about because of the smaller wheels and tires. The outside diameter of the tires of the Xpander, the new Xpander, is about 25 millimeters larger than this one, because these are 16. So it makes a big difference in terms of the fuel economy, and also with acceleration. It's going to be easier actually for this one to accelerate, all things being equal, with engine, transmission. It's going to be easier for this one to accelerate off the line compared to the one with the bigger tires. It's also going to be very more fuel efficient, slightly, in the city because of the low speed. So acceleration being easier, fuel economy is a little bit better, around 8.5 kilometers per liter in the city, around the same speeds of 22. When it comes to the highway, it's around the same. I think we're getting around 18, maybe a little bit less. So more or less, it does give you a little bit of a difference, but really, there's not much between the two apart from some of the design bits, and that's actually a good thing. Now, the only thing I would really criticize this for is with the quality control in some minor aspects. One is with the steering column, there's a little bit of a rattle in here somewhere. I think a screw is loose somewhere, so hopefully they can fix that. But being that these two vehicles are built in the same factory, it's kind of a shared thing. If you want a very simple analogy to compare the Xpander and the Levina, it's like the fried chicken of Jollibee and the fried chicken of Chowking. It's the same supplier because they're in the same group. The taste is a little bit different, but underneath it's pretty much the same. That's what I guess this is. But that's not a bad thing, because again, I mentioned that being efficient for a company when it comes to the economies of scale is always a good thing. The Mitsubishi Xpander and the Nissan Livina really are twins separated at birth. The reason being economies of scale. By going in that direction, Mitsubishi and Nissan can produce more for less per unit. That is what is key here. They are working on the profitability of both companies by having two distinct models built on one assembly line in one factory using the same parts, or at least as many of the same parts as possible. Now, that also means that the good parts of both vehicles are actually very much shared. We like the engineering that went into the Xpander and a lot of Mitsubishis. The chassis, the unibody is really, really good. The handling is good. The driving feel is really good. A lot of those translate into the Livina. But that also means that the issues we found in one or either of these vehicles, we can attribute to both vehicles because they're built on the same assembly line. And what we have found is that QC, QA, and PDI. QC meaning quality control, quality assurance, and then you have pre-delivery inspection. Those are just some of the issues we found in the Livina, but make no mistake about it, they would probably apply to both, because looking at the steering column, that's where we found the issues to be. In the Xpander, it was a little misaligned, a little canted that way. In the Livina, even more so canted that way. And there's also a screw loose somewhere in there that we can't get to tighten down. But make no mistake about it. In terms of driving feel and performance and how well these vehicles perform every day, I think either way you go is going to be a good option. It just really depends on which look you like, which brand you prefer, and really what price point you're shopping at. This one, it's retailing at 1,180,000 pesos. This one is 1,149,000 pesos. Whichever way you go, it's actually a good vehicle. This is Vince of AutoIndustriya. Thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you think of the Livina and the Xpander. And also, let us know what other Comparos you'd like to see from us in the future.